Park stood at the far corner of the grand hall trying to make himself as small as possible. This was his job: stand still, watch everything, say nothing. He was just a human guard, one of only 12 humans allowed on the space station called Horizon's Edge. In the eyes of every alien species gathered here today, he was barely worth noticing. The hall was beautiful in a way that made feel like an insect standing inside a palace. The walls curved upward like the inside of a seashell, glowing with soft blue and purple light. Hundreds of alien delegates filled the space. Some had scales. Some had too many arms. Some floated instead of walking. They spoke in languages translator Chip could barely keep up with. But everyone fell silent when Queen entered. She was tall, almost 3 meters, with skin that glowed like moonlight on water. The people called her the Eternal Mother. She had ruled their empire for over 400 years. When she spoke, star systems listened. When she was pleased, treaties were signed. When she was angry, worlds trembled. Today she was here to open the Peace Summit. If this summit succeeded, humanity might finally be accepted as full members of the Galactic Coalition. If it failed, humans would remain what they had always been since first contact: outsiders, watched with suspicion, tolerated but never trusted. Watch the Queen walk to the central platform. Her movements were graceful, like water flowing uphill. Her royal guards, massive warriors with ceremonial blades, flanked her on both sides. Behind her walked High Physician, a 6-limbed in silver robes, always close enough to serve if needed. The Queen raised her hands, and the hall fell into perfect silence. "We gather today as many peoples," she began, her voice musical and deep, "to build one future." Let his eyes wander across the crowd. He spotted near the human diplomatic section, dressed in her formal uniform. She caught his eye and gave him a tiny nod. They had grown up in the same district back on Earth, had trained together, had dreamed together of reaching the stars. Now here they were, standing in a room full of beings older and more powerful than humanity could imagine. The Queen continued her speech. She spoke of unity, of shared purpose, of leaving old hatred behind. Had heard speeches like this before. He was not really listening. He was watching. That was when he saw it. The Queen's hand twitched. Just a small movement, almost invisible. Then her glowing skin flickered, the light dimming for half a second before returning. She paused mid-sentence as if she had forgotten what came next. Straightened, something was wrong. The Queen placed one hand on her chest. Her fingers pressed hard against her body. Her glow flickered again, faster this time, like a dying light bulb. Then her legs folded beneath her and she collapsed. The hall exploded into chaos. Guards rushed forward, forming a protective circle around their fallen queen. Delegates screamed and shouted in a dozen languages. His translator gave up entirely, feeding him only fragments. Commander, the head of the Queen's royal guard, bellowed orders in his native tongue. High Physician dropped to his knees beside the Queen, pulling strange devices from his robes. Did not move, he watched. The Queen's body convulsed once, twice. Her glow was now irregular, pulsing like a heartbeat that could not find its rhythm. Pressed a scanner to her chest and stared at the readings. He shouted something to his assistants. More medical equipment appeared. Injectors hissed. Monitors beeped. But nothing was working. Could see it on his face, even though the alien's expressions were hard to read. Confusion. Fear. He did not know what was happening. Knew that look. He had worn it himself years ago when he was a military medic on a frontier colony. A soldier had collapsed the same way, sudden, without warning, clutching his chest. That soldier had a pacemaker. Something had interfered with it. An unshielded reactor had been emitting a frequency that disrupted the device. The symptoms were the same: the twitching, the rhythm of the distress, the way the Queen's hands moved. But that was impossible. They were an ancient species. Their medicine was far beyond anything humans had. They would not use something as crude as an artificial heart device. Would they? Commander raised his voice above the chaos. All non-personnel will evacuate immediately. This area is now restricted. Guards began pushing delegates toward the exits. Felt a hand on his shoulder. Lee, the head of their small human security team. Move now. Did not argue. He walked toward the exit with the other humans, but at the door he stopped and looked back. Was still working. The Queen was still dying, and no one seemed to understand why. Turned away and stepped through the door. It closed behind him with a soft hiss. That night the station fell into a grim silence. The summit was suspended. All delegations were confined to their quarters. News spread quickly through the corridors. Queen was alive, but barely. The physicians could not explain her condition. They could not save her. And if she died, everything changed. The empire would fall into chaos. The summit would collapse, and humanity's petition for full coalition membership would be for another 100 years. Lay on his bunk, staring at the ceiling. He could not stop thinking about what he had seen. The way the Queen collapsed, the rhythm of her symptoms, the flicker of her glow. He had seen this before, he was sure of it. But who would listen to a human guard? Who would believe that a lowly soldier from a primitive species had noticed something that the greatest physicians in the galaxy had missed? No one, that was the answer. And yet the question would not leave him alone. What if he was right? Could not sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the Queen falling. He saw her skin flickering. He saw confusion. The image played again and again in his mind like a broken recording. Finally, he gave up trying to rest. He sat up on his bunk and reached beneath his mattress. His fingers found the small metal case he had hidden there. Inside were data chips, old files from his days as a military medic. He was not supposed to have kept them. When he left the service, he was ordered to delete everything, but had always been bad at following orders when they did not make sense. He plugged one chip into his personal tablet and began searching. It took him almost an hour to find what he was looking for. There it was, a medical report from 6 years ago. A soldier named Private had collapsed on a frontier colony. The symptoms were sudden chest pain, irregular heartbeat, muscle spasms, and loss of consciousness. The cause was electromagnetic interference from an unshielded reactor. The soldier had a pacemaker, a small device that helped his heart beat properly. The reactor's emissions had disrupted the device, nearly killing him. Stared at the report. The symptoms matched what he had seen in the Queen, but they did not use artificial heart devices. They were too advanced for that. Or were they? He needed more information. He needed to know about biology, but that kind of data was restricted. Humans were not allowed to access it. Knew one person who might be able to help. He found in the diplomatic quarters the next morning. She looked tired, with dark circles under her eyes. The entire human delegation had been awake all night, worried about what the Queen's illness meant for their future. "You look terrible," said when she saw him. "I need your help," replied. "I need access to restricted files, medical records." Stared at him for a long moment. "Are you insane? Do you know what would happen if we got caught?" "The Queen is dying, and I think I know why." He explained what he had seen, the symptoms, the pattern, his theory about electromagnetic interference, listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time. "This is crazy," she said finally. "You're a guard, you're not a doctor, and they have the best medical technology in the galaxy." "I know how it sounds, but I've seen this before. I'm not wrong." "Even if you're right, what can we do? We're humans. Nobody listens to us." Leaned closer. "Help me find the information first. If I'm wrong, we forget this ever happened. If I'm right, we figure out what to do next." Looked at him for a long time. They had known each other since childhood. She knew he was stubborn. She also knew he was usually right. "Fine," she said, "but if we get caught, I'm blaming everything on you." It took them 3 hours to access the restricted database. used her diplomatic codes to get past the first layer of security, used his technical skills to bypass the second. The files were encrypted, but they managed to find what they needed. What they discovered makes blood run cold. Queen was old, ancient by standards. 400 years was a long time, even for her species. 70 years ago, her natural heart had begun to fail. The royal physicians had faced a terrible choice. They could let their queen die, or they could give her a biosynthetic cardiac regulator, a mechanical device that would help her heart function. They chose the device. But they kept it secret. The people believed their queen was immortal, blessed by the gods. If they learned she needed a machine to keep her alive, it would destroy her image. It might even destroy the empire. So the secret was buried. Only a handful of physicians knew the truth. And now that secret was killing her. The device, said, pointing at the screen, it's old technology. It operates on a specific frequency. If something is emitting a signal on that frequency, it would disrupt the device. It would cause exactly the symptoms we saw. His face was pale. But what would be emitting that signal? The station has been here for decades. Nothing has changed. Thought about it. Something must have changed. Something new was added to the station. Something that wasn't here before. They searched the station's engineering logs. It took another hour, but finally they found it. 3 days before the summit, a new communication array had been installed on the station's outer hull. It was a gift from the consortium, a powerful faction that had been rivals of the Empire for centuries. The array was meant to improve long-range communications for the summit. But according to the technical specifications, the array emitted a subharmonic frequency. The signal was too low for most species to detect. It was harmless to almost everyone. But for a biosynthetic cardiac regulator built on 70-year-old technology, it was deadly. Sat back, his mind racing. This was not an accident. This was not a coincidence. Someone had planned this. Someone had known about the Queen's secret. Someone had installed a device specifically designed to kill her. This was assassination. "We need to tell someone," whispered. "We need to go to the authorities." "And say what?" replied. "That 2 humans broke into restricted files and discovered a conspiracy. They'll arrest us before we finish our first sentence." "So what do we do?" Stared at the screen. The Queen was dying. The evidence was right in front of him. But if he revealed what he knew, he would be admitting to crimes. He would be exposing a conspiracy that could start a war. He would be putting humanity's already fragile reputation at risk. But if he stayed silent, the Queen would die. The summit would fail, and humans would remain outsiders for another century. He closed his eyes and made his choice. "We save her," he said, "whatever it takes." The maintenance corridors of Horizon's Edge were dark and narrow. They smelled of metal and recycled air, moved through them like a ghost, staying in the shadows, listening for footsteps. If anyone found him here, he would have no explanation. He would be arrested, maybe worse. But he needed proof, real proof, something he could show to people who would never believe a human guard's word. He had memorized the station's layout from the engineering files. The communication array was connected to a control hub on level 7. If he could access that hub, he could record the exact frequencies the array was emitting. He could prove that it was targeting the Queen's cardiac regulator. The corridor ended at a sealed door. Pulled out a small device, a code breaker he had borrowed from Lee's equipment locker. Would be furious when he found out, but would deal with that later. The door hissed open. Beyond it was a room filled with blinking lights and humming machines. The control hub. Moved quickly. He connected his tablet to the main terminal and began downloading data. Numbers and frequencies scrolled across the screen. Most of it meant nothing to him, but there, buried in the middle of the readings, was what he was looking for. The array was emitting a subharmonic frequency of 27.3 Hz, According to the files he had read, the Queen's cardiac regulator operated at 27.5 Hz. The difference was tiny, almost undetectable, but it was enough to cause interference. It was enough to make the device malfunction. And here was the proof. The frequency had been deliberately calibrated. It was not random. It was not an accident. Someone had programmed the array to emit exactly this signal. Saved the data and disconnected his tablet. He was about to leave when he heard footsteps in the corridor outside. He froze. The footsteps came closer. Voices spoke in a language he did not recognize, maybe. Then they passed by and faded into the distance. Let out a slow breath. He waited another minute before slipping back into the corridor and making his way to the human quarters. Lee was waiting for him. The older man sat on his bunk, arms crossed, face hard as stone. "You took my equipment," said. "It was not a question." Closed the door behind him. "I needed it." "For what?" "To prove that someone is trying to kill the Queen." His expression did not change, but something shifted in his eyes. "Explain." Told him everything. The Queen's secret cardiac regulator, the array, the deliberate frequency calibration. As he spoke, he showed the data on his tablet. The older man studied the readings in silence. When finished, was quiet for a long time. "Do you understand what you're saying?" finally asked. "You're accusing the consortium of trying to assassinate the most powerful leader in this sector. If you're wrong, you'll start a war. If you're right, you might also start a war." "I know. And you came to me because you need help." "I came to you because you're the only person who might understand." Laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Understand what? That you've broken a dozen laws, that you've put our entire delegation at risk, that everything humanity has worked for could be destroyed because of what you've done." "I understand all of that," said, "but I also know that the Queen is dying. Right now, while we're sitting here talking, she is dying, and I can save her. I know how to save her." How? Had been thinking about this since he first saw the data. The Queen's cardiac regulator was malfunctioning because of the frequency interference. If they could stop the interference, the device might stabilize on its own. But even if they disabled the array, the damage might already be too severe. The Queen might need her regulator manually recalibrated. Human defibrillators worked on similar principles. They delivered electrical pulses to restart or regulate a heart's rhythm. With some modifications, believed he could build a device that would work on the Queen's regulator. It would be crude. It would be dangerous, but it might work. "I need to get close to the Queen," said. "I need to use a modified defibrillator to reset her cardiac regulator. But first, we need to disable that array." Stared at him. "You want to perform surgery on an alien Queen using equipment you built yourself?" "Yes." "In a room full of guards who will kill you the moment you get close to her?" "Yes." "And you need me to help you disable a communication array installed by a hostile foreign power?" "Yes." Was silent for a moment, then he shook his head. "You're insane." "Probably. This will never work." "It might not. We could all die. Or worse, we could succeed and still be blamed for everything." "That's possible too." Stood up and walked to the small window. Outside, stars burned against the blackness of space. Somewhere out there was Earth, the small blue world that had sent them here with such hope. "I was a soldier for 30 years, said quietly. "I've followed orders. I've kept my head down. I've done what I was told. And where has it gotten us? We're still outsiders. We're still treated like children. We're still waiting for permission to exist." He turned back to, "Maybe it's time we stopped waiting." Felt something loosen in his chest. "So you'll help." His face was grim, but his eyes were steady. "Tell me the plan." They talked through the night. By dawn they had a plan. It was desperate. It was dangerous. It would probably fail. But it was their only chance. And sometimes thought that was enough. The plan had three parts. First would create a distraction. Second's team would disable the array. Third would reach the queen and save her life. Simple, clean, almost certainly doomed to fail. But they had no other choice. Was terrified, could see it in her eyes when she met them in the corridor that morning. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. "The ambassador has requested a meeting with all human diplomatic staff," she said. "I told them we have urgent trade complaints that cannot wait. They think we're just being annoying humans. They have no idea what's really happening." "How long can you keep them busy?" asked. "An hour, maybe more if I talk slowly and ask stupid questions." "That's enough." Had gathered his team, 4 human security officers who had agreed to help without asking too many questions. They trusted their commander. That was enough for them. Carried a small bag over his shoulder. Inside was the device he had built during the night, a modified defibrillator connected to a frequency modulator. It looked like a mess of wires and metal. It probably was a mess of wires and metal, but according to his calculations, it should work. Should not would should. They moved out at exactly 9 station hours, headed for the diplomatic wing, and his team headed for the outer hull access points, headed for the Royal Medical Quarters. The corridors were quiet. Most of the station was still under lockdown. Guards patrolled at regular intervals but had memorized their schedules. He moved between them like water flowing through cracks. His earpiece crackled. His voice came through, low and tense. "We're at the array, starting the shutdown now. You have maybe 10 minutes before someone notices." "Understood." Picked up his pace. The Royal Medical Quarters were 2 levels up and 3 sections across. He used maintenance ladders and service tunnels to avoid the main corridors. His heart was pounding. His hands were sweating. He forced himself to breathe slowly. He reached the final corridor. Ahead, 2 massive doors marked the entrance to the Queen's chambers. 4 guards stood watch, tall, armored, each one strong enough to break in half with one hand. And standing in front of them was Commander. Stopped, he had hoped to avoid this. He had hoped to find a back entrance, a window, anything. But there was only one way in and was blocking it. He could turn back. He could walk away right now and pretend none of this ever happened. But then the Queen would die. Stepped out of the shadows. Saw him immediately. The commander's eyes narrowed. His hand moved to the blade at his side. "Human," said. The word sounded like a curse. "You should not be here." "I know." "Turn around, leave, now." Did not move. "Your queen is dying, Commander, and I know why. I know how to save her." His expression flickered, surprise, suspicion, anger. "You, a human guard, you think you know more than our finest physicians." "I know what they're missing. There's a device in her chest, a cardiac regulator. It was installed 70 years ago. Something on this station is interfering with it. That's why she collapsed. That's why your doctors can't help her. They're treating the wrong problem." His face was stone. "How do you know about the regulator?" "It doesn't matter how I know. What matters is that I can fix it." "You're lying. This is some human trick." "If I'm lying, then arrest me. Execute me. Do whatever you want, but let me try first. Give me 5 minutes with her. If I fail, you lose nothing. If I succeed, your queen lives." Stared at him. The silence stretched out like a wire pulled tight. His earpiece crackled again. His voice was urgent. "Array is disabled, but they're onto us. Security is moving. You need to hurry." Kept his eyes on. The commander was studying him, searching for something. Deception, fear, weakness. Tried to show him none of those things. He tried to show him only the truth. "Please," said, "I'm not asking you to trust humans. I'm asking you to trust me." For a long moment, nothing happened. The guards shifted nervously. His hand remained on his blade. Then slowly, the commander stepped aside. "If she dies because of you," said quietly, "I will make your death last a very long time." "Understood." The doors opened, walked through. The Queen's chamber was vast and filled with soft light. Medical equipment surrounded her bed, monitors, scanners, devices did not recognize. High Physician looked up as entered. His expression shifted from confusion to anger. "What is this? Who allowed this human in here?" "I did," his voice came from behind. "Let him work." Sputtered with outrage. "This is madness. He's not qualified. He's not even." "Let him work." Approached the Queen's bed. She lay there still and pale, her glow barely visible. Her eyes were closed. Her breathing was shallow. He pulled out his device. It looked crude next to the elegant equipment, made a sound of disgust. Ignored him. He placed the device against the Queen's chest, over the location where his readings indicated the cardiac regulator was implanted. He adjusted the frequency modulator, trying to match the regulator's operating wavelength. His hands were shaking now. He could feel every eye in the room on him. If he made a mistake, if the frequency was wrong by even a fraction, the Queen would die instantly. He took a breath. He pressed the activation switch. The Queen's body convulsed once. Her glow flickered wildly. Every alarm in the room started screaming. Lunged forward. "Stop him, he's killing her." But held him back. "Wait." Adjusted the frequency. His fingers moved on instinct, making tiny changes, searching for the right signal. The Queen convulsed again. Her heart stopped. The monitors showed a flat line. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3. And then a beat, weak at first, then stronger. The flat line became a rhythm. The alarms fell silent. The Queen's glow stabilized. Her skin brightened. Her breathing deepened. She opened her eyes. For a moment, she simply looked at this small, strange creature standing over her with his primitive device. Then slowly, she nodded. "Human," she whispered, "what is your name?" "Park, Your Majesty." She closed her eyes again, but she was smiling. "I will remember that name." Stepped back, his legs were trembling. His heart was racing. He could barely breathe. But the Queen was alive. Against all odds, the Queen was alive. The next 3 days passed in a blur of investigations, accusations, and revelations. The consortium everything at first. They claimed the communication array was a gift given in good faith. They called the accusations outrageous lies invented by jealous rivals. They demanded that the humans who had exposed the conspiracy be punished for their crimes. But the evidence was too strong to ignore. Data showed the deliberate frequency calibration. His team had recorded the signals before they disabled the array. And when coalition investigators examined the internal communications, they found messages discussing the Queen's secret cardiac regulator, information that should have been impossible to obtain. The conspiracy ran deep. Agents had infiltrated the royal court decades ago. They had waited patiently, gathering information, looking for weaknesses. When they learned about the Queen's device, they began planning her assassination. The summit was the perfect opportunity. If the Queen died during a peace conference, the empire would collapse into chaos. The consortium would emerge as the dominant power in the sector. But a human guard had noticed something no one else did, and everything had changed. The delegation was expelled from the station. Their ambassador was arrested. The coalition condemned the assassination attempt in the strongest possible terms. Several member species who had previously supported the consortium quietly their support. Meanwhile, the human delegation waited nervously for judgment. Yes had saved the Queen, but he had also broken countless laws. He had accessed restricted files, stolen equipment, and infiltrated secure areas. By any legal standard, he was a criminal. They all were. On the 4th day, the Queen summoned them. She received them in her private chambers, not the medical quarters, but her true residence on the station. It was smaller than expected and simpler. The walls were decorated with images of stars and distant worlds. Soft music played from somewhere unseen. The queen sat in a high-backed chair, dressed in simple robes. Her glow was strong and steady now. She looked healthier than she had before the attack. She thought like someone who had faced death and decided it was not yet her time. Beside her stood Commander and High Physician. Behind the humans stood a row of officials, their expressions unreadable. The queen studied the humans for a long moment. Her eyes moved from face to face, the security officers. Finally, she spoke. "You broke our laws," she said. Her voice was calm, without anger. "You accessed secrets you had no right to see. You acted without permission, without authority, without any guarantee of success." Felt his heart sink. This was it. Despite everything, they were going to be punished. "Commander has recommended severe penalties," the Queen continued. "High Physician believes you should be expelled from Coalition space permanently. Several members of my court have suggested execution." The silence in the room was crushing. Then the Queen smiled. "I have chosen to ignore all of their recommendations." Blinked, he was not sure he had heard correctly. "You broke our laws," the Queen repeated. "But you did so to save my life. You had nothing to gain and everything to lose. You risked your freedom, your future, and your lives for someone who was not your queen, not your leader, not even your species." She rose from her chair. Despite her age, despite her recent brush with death, she moved with grace and power. She walked toward and stopped directly in front of him. "Why?" she asked softly. "Why did you do it?" Thought about the question. He thought about all the reasons he could give: duty, honor, political calculation, the hope of improving humanity's standing. All of those things were true. But they were not the real answer. "Because it was the right thing to do," he said simply. "Because you were dying and I could help. Because that's what humans do." The Queen studied his face. Whatever she was looking for, she seemed to find it. "Commander," she said, turning to her guard, "you told me once that humans were dangerous, that they could not be trusted, that their compassion was a weakness." Shifted uncomfortably. "I remember, Your Majesty." "You were wrong." The Queen turned to address the entire room, humans and alike. "We have judged humanity by rumors and fears," she said. "We have seen their wars and their violence, and we have assumed that is all they are. But I have seen something different. I have seen a species that will risk everything for a stranger. I have seen courage without reward. I have seen compassion as strength." She raised her hand. The room fell into absolute silence. "As Queen of the Empire, I formally endorse humanity's petition for full membership in the Galactic Coalition. Let no species oppose this. Let no voice speak against it. Humanity has earned their place among the stars." For a moment, no one moved. Then the officials began to applaud, a strange, clicking sound that gradually filled the room. Commander bowed his head in acknowledgement. Even, who had been so hostile, inclined his body in a gesture of respect. Felt's hand found his. She was crying. Stood straight and tall, his face unreadable but could see moisture in his eyes. After 400 years of watching from the outside, humanity was finally home. Later, when the ceremonies were over and the officials had departed, the Queen asked to stay behind. They stood alone in her chamber, two figures from different worlds separated by centuries of evolution, but connected by something simpler, something human perhaps, even though only one of them was. "I am told you refused all honors," the Queen said. "No titles, no positions, no rewards." "I didn't do it for rewards." "I know, that is why I wish to offer them," she smiled. "What will you do now, Park?" He thought about it. He could ask for anything: a ship of his own, a position in the diplomatic corps, a chance to explore the galaxy. "I think I'll go back to my post," he said. "Someone has to stand in the corner and watch." The Queen laughed, a sound like distant bells. "You are a strange creature, human." "So I've been told." She placed her hand over her chest, where her heart beat strong and steady. "I will not forget what you did. My people will not forget. As long as the Empire endures, humanity will have a friend. Bowed a human gesture, awkward and imperfect but sincere. He returned to his post that evening. The Grand Hall was being prepared for the continuation of the summit. Delegates moved through the corridors, speaking in dozens of languages. Everything looked the same as before. But everything had changed. As took his place at the far corner of the hall, he noticed the other species watching him, not with suspicion anymore, not with dismissal, with something that looked almost like respect. Commander walked past. The massive guard stopped, turned, and placed his hand over his chest, the gesture of profound respect that had seen only in ceremonies. Human said. Nodded Commander. Nothing more was needed. Stood in his corner and watched. The universe continued to turn. Stars burned in the darkness, and somewhere among them a small blue planet called Earth had finally taken its place in the light. This was what humans did. They stood in the shadows. They noticed things others missed. And when the moment came, when lives hung in the balance and courage was needed, they stepped forward. Not for glory, not for reward, not for themselves, but because it was the right thing to do. And in the end, that made all the difference.